In the quiet town of McAllister, Oklahoma, there stood an old, decrepit house at the end of Pine Street. For years, it was known as the Barker House, named after its original owners who had mysteriously vanished in the late 1970s. The house remained empty, slowly falling into disrepair, its windows broken and its doors creaking with every gust of wind. Locals whispered about it being haunted, but no one dared to venture inside. In June 2024, a group of urban explorers, intrigued by the legends, decided to investigate the Barker House. Equipped with cameras and flashlights, they entered the house at dusk, determined to document their findings. The air inside was thick with dust, and the floorboards groaned under their weight. As they moved through the house, they noticed strange symbols carved into the walls and remnants of old furniture scattered about. In the basement, they found an old journal belonging to one of the Barkers, detailing eerie events that had occurred before their disappearance. The journal spoke of strange noises, shadows moving in the night, and an overwhelming sense of dread that filled the house. Suddenly, the explorers heard footsteps above them, even though they were the only ones in the house. Nervously, they climbed the stairs to the second floor, where the footsteps seemed to be coming from. As they reached the top, they were met with a chilling sight, a figure standing at the end of the hallway, its features obscured by the darkness. One of the explorers, Jessica, bravely called out, "Who's there?" but received no response. The figure began to move towards them, its footsteps echoing through the house. Panicked, they fled down the stairs, but the figure seemed to follow them, its presence growing stronger and more menacing. As they reached the front door, it slammed shut on its own, trapping them inside. The explorers frantically tried to open it, but it wouldn't budge. The air grew colder, and a sense of suffocating fear enveloped them. Suddenly, the figure appeared again, this time at the bottom of the stairs, blocking their escape. Jessica, desperate to leave, remembered an old saying she had read about spirits. Acknowledge them and ask for peace. With a trembling voice, she said, "We acknowledge you. We mean no harm. Please, let us leave in peace." To their astonishment, the figure stopped moving and slowly faded away. The front door creaked open, and they bolted outside, not daring to look back. They never spoke of what they saw in detail, but their footage captured the eerie events, showing shadows and unexplained movements. The Barker House still stands, its secrets buried within its walls. Locals avoid it more than ever, convinced that something sinister resides there, waiting for the next intruders to disturb its unsettling silence. In March 2024, in the outskirts of Asheville, North Carolina, there lay an old Victorian house known to locals as the Sullivan Estate, once a grand mansion. It had been abandoned for decades after the tragic death of its last owner, Eliza Sullivan, who reportedly died under mysterious circumstances. Stories circulated about the house being cursed, and few dared to approach it. One night, a pair of ghost hunters, Mike and Sarah, decided to investigate the Sullivan Estate for their YouTube channel. Equipped with high-tech ghost hunting gear, they entered the house just before midnight, hoping to capture evidence of the paranormal activity that so many had spoken of. The house was eerily quiet, save for the occasional creak of old wood. As they explored the first floor, they noted a strong, inexplicable coldness in the air and a faint, sweet scent, like old perfume. In the parlor, they set up their cameras and began asking questions, hoping to communicate with any spirits present. Suddenly, their EMF detector spiked, indicating a strong electromagnetic field nearby. At the same moment, they heard a soft, almost musical humming coming from upstairs. The sound sent chills down their spines, but they decided to follow it, hoping to find its source. Ascending the grand staircase, they found themselves in a long hallway lined with closed doors. The humming grew louder, and seemed to be coming from the end of the hall. They approached the last door cautiously and, with a deep breath, pushed it open. Inside was a bedroom, remarkably well preserved compared to the rest of the house. It looked as if someone had just left it, with a neatly made bed, antique furniture, and personal items scattered about. The humming stopped abruptly, leaving an oppressive silence in its wake. As they scanned the room with their equipment, Sarah noticed an old, ornate music box on the dresser. Curious, she reached out to touch it, but before she could, the lid sprang open on its own, playing a haunting melody. At that moment, the temperature in the room plummeted, and they both saw the figure of a woman in an old-fashioned dress standing by the window, her face obscured by shadows. Mike and Sarah were frozen in fear as the figure turned towards them. In a voice barely above a whisper, the woman said, "Why have you come here?" Her presence was overwhelmingly sad, and tears seemed to glisten on her ghostly face. Sarah, trying to remain calm, replied, "We mean no harm. We just want to understand what happened here." The figure sighed, and the room filled with the scent of roses. She began to speak of a tragic love story, of betrayal and loss, hinting at a dark secret buried within the estate. As she spoke, the room grew darker, and the shadows seemed to close in around them. Realizing they were not welcome, Mike and Sarah decided it was time to leave. As they backed out of the room, the music box stopped playing, and the figure vanished. They hurried down the stairs and out of the house, not stopping until they were safely back in their car. Reviewing their footage later, they found chilling evidence of their encounter: the music box playing by itself, the temperature drops, and the unmistakable figure of Eliza Sullivan. The video quickly went viral, drawing attention from paranormal enthusiasts worldwide. The Sullivan estate remains abandoned, but now more than ever, it's a place of fear and fascination. Those who venture near it report hearing the same haunting melody and seeing the shadowy figure of Eliza Sullivan, forever trapped by the sorrow of her past. In early July 2024, in the remote town of Millersville, Pennsylvania, there was a derelict house known as the Holloway Manor. The house had been vacant for over 30 years, since the entire Holloway family disappeared without a trace. Over time, rumors of strange occurrences and ghostly sightings turned the manor into a place of dread. A group of local teenagers, fueled by curiosity and summer boredom, decided to explore Holloway Manor. Armed with flashlights and their phones, they entered the house just after sunset, eager to uncover the secrets that lay within. The interior was a snapshot of a bygone era, with faded wallpaper, broken furniture, and cobwebs everywhere. As they moved through the dusty rooms, they noticed an odd pattern. Each room seemed to have toys scattered around, untouched and eerily placed, as if waiting for children to return. In the dim light of their flashlights, they made their way to the basement, where they had heard the most unsettling stories. The air grew colder, and an unshakable sense of unease settled over them. At the bottom of the stairs, they found an old, rusty door slightly ajar. Pushing it open, they revealed a large, cluttered room filled with forgotten belongings and dusty relics of the past. In the corner of the room, they saw a large, ornate mirror, its surface covered in grime. One of the teens, Emily, dared to wipe the mirror clean, revealing their reflections. Suddenly, the temperature dropped further, and they all felt a cold, clammy presence behind them. Turning around, they saw the faint outline of a figure in old-fashioned clothing, its face obscured by shadow. The figure seemed to be watching them silently. Panic set in, and they scrambled to leave, but the door they had entered through was now shut tight, as if held by an unseen force. Desperate to escape, they huddled together, their breaths visible in the cold air. Emily, remembering a local legend, spoke aloud, "We don't mean to disturb you. Please let us go." The figure remained motionless for a moment, then slowly raised its arm to point towards the mirror. As they looked, the mirror's surface began to shimmer, revealing the image of the Holloway family, frozen in time. The scene showed them in the same basement, looking terrified, as a dark shadow loomed over them. Suddenly, the mirror shattered, and the oppressive cold lifted. The door creaked open on its own, and the teenagers didn't hesitate to flee the house. They ran until they were back in the safety of their homes, vowing never to return. The experience left them shaken, but they couldn't help but feel a sense of sadness for the Holloway family, trapped in an eternal nightmare. Word of their encounter spread quickly, adding another layer of fear to the already infamous Holloway Manor. To this day, the manor stands abandoned, a chilling reminder of the family's mysterious disappearance and the dark presence that lingers within its walls. Those brave enough to approach the house at night claim to hear the faint sound of children laughing and the cold whisper of a forgotten tragedy. In April 2024, in the rural town of Lexington, Virginia, there was an old farmhouse known as the Wilkinson Place. The house had been left empty for decades after the tragic death of its last owner, Jacob Wilkinson, who was rumored to have gone mad and taken his own life. Locals spoke of strange lights and ghostly figures, but the house remained untouched, shrouded in mystery. A team of paranormal investigators, led by Tom and Lisa, decided to explore Wilkinson Place for their online series. Equipped with night vision cameras and audio recorders, they entered the house on a chilly evening, just as the sun was setting. The interior was in disrepair, with peeling paint and broken windows. As they walked through the house, they noticed that the walls were covered with old photographs of the Wilkinson family, their faces frozen in time. An unsettling feeling washed over them as they moved deeper into the house. In the kitchen, they set up their equipment and began their investigation. Almost immediately, their EMF meters began to spike, indicating a strong presence. They heard faint whispers and the sound of footsteps echoing through the halls. Determined to capture evidence, they split up to cover more ground. Tom ventured upstairs, where he found a room that appeared to have been Jacob Wilkinson's study. The room was filled with dusty books and papers scattered across a large oak desk. As Tom sifted through the papers, he found a journal that detailed Jacob's descent into madness. The entries spoke of hearing voices and seeing shadowy figures that drove him to the brink. Meanwhile, Lisa explored the basement, which was dark and damp. She noticed strange symbols carved into the walls, and the air grew colder with each step she took. Suddenly, she heard a loud thud behind her. Turning around, she saw an old rusted door she hadn't noticed before. Gathering her courage, she pushed it open and stepped inside. The room was small and empty, except for a single wooden chair in the center. Lisa felt an overwhelming sense of dread and quickly decided to leave. As she turned to exit, the door slammed shut, trapping her inside. Panicking, she called out to Tom, but her voice seemed to be swallowed by the darkness. Upstairs, Tom heard Lisa's cries and rushed to the basement. He found the door locked and struggled to open it. Finally, with a loud creak, the door gave way, and he pulled Lisa out. They both felt a cold hand brush against them as they left the room, sending shivers down their spines. Back in the kitchen, they reviewed their footage and audio recordings. To their shock, they captured several clear EVP electronic voice phenomenon recordings of a man's voice saying, "Get out," and "Leave us." The night vision cameras had also recorded shadowy figures moving in the background. The experience left them deeply unsettled, and they decided to end the investigation early. They packed up their equipment and left Wilkinson Place, vowing never to return. Their findings were posted online, drawing significant attention from paranormal enthusiasts and skeptics alike. Despite the eerie evidence, Wilkinson Place remains abandoned, its dark secrets buried within its walls. Locals continued to avoid the house, convinced that the restless spirit of Jacob Wilkinson still haunts the property, guarding its tragic past. In October 2023, in the quiet town of Brookfield, Wisconsin, there was an old colonial house known as the Davenport Residence. It had been abandoned since the early 1990s after the sudden disappearance of the Davenport family. Over the years, it became a place of local legend, with many claiming it was haunted by the spirits of the missing family. One autumn evening, a group of friends, Mark, Julie, Ben, and Hannah, decided to explore the Davenport residence as part of their Halloween tradition. Armed with flashlights and a sense of adventure, they entered the house through a broken window, eager to see if the rumors were true. The inside of the house was eerily preserved, as if frozen in time. Dust-covered furniture, family photos, and personal belongings were scattered throughout the rooms. The air was thick with a musty smell, and the floorboards creaked with every step they took. As they moved through the house, they noticed that all the clocks had stopped at exactly 3:15 a.m. The coincidence sent a chill down their spines, but they pressed on, determined to uncover the secrets of the Davenport residence. They made their way to the second floor, where they found a child's bedroom. Toys were strewn across the floor, and a small antique rocking chair sat by the window, gently rocking back and forth, though there was no breeze. Hannah approached the chair, and it suddenly stopped moving. The temperature in the room dropped noticeably, and they all felt an unseen presence watching them. Mark suggested they check the basement, where the most chilling stories were centered. Reluctantly, they agreed and descended the narrow, creaky stairs. The basement was dark and cold, with an oppressive atmosphere that made it hard to breathe. In the corner of the basement, they found an old wooden chest. Curiosity getting the better of them, Ben pried it open. Inside were various family mementos, including a diary belonging to Mrs. Davenport. The last entry was dated the night before the family vanished and spoke of strange noises and an overwhelming sense of dread that had taken over the house. As they read the diary, they heard a soft whispering coming from the shadows. The whispers grew louder, forming an unintelligible chorus that echoed through the basement. Julie, terrified, dropped the diary and backed away, only to trip over something on the floor. When they shone their flashlights on the object, they were horrified to discover skeletal remains partially buried in the dirt. Panic set in as they realized the truth. The Davenport family hadn't disappeared. They had been murdered and hidden in the basement. The whispers turned into anguished cries, and the friends saw ghostly figures emerging from the walls, their faces twisted in agony. The spirits of the Davenport family reached out to them, pleading for help. Mark, Julie, Ben, and Hannah fled the basement, racing up the stairs and out of the house as fast as they could. Once outside, they called the police, who conducted a thorough investigation. The remains were confirmed to be those of the Davenport family, and the case was reopened. Despite extensive efforts, the identity of the murderer remains unknown. The Davenport residence was sealed off and declared a crime scene, but locals believe the spirits of the family still haunt the house, seeking justice for their untimely deaths. Those brave enough to approach the house at night claim to hear the whispers and cries of the restless souls trapped within, forever bound to the place where their lives were brutally ended. In December 2023, in the small town of Harpers Ferry, West Virginia, there was a dilapidated mansion known as Whispering Oaks. It had been abandoned for over 40 years, following the sudden and mysterious deaths of the Hawthorne family. Locals avoided the mansion, believing it was cursed and haunted by the spirits of the family. One cold winter night, a paranormal investigator named Rachel decided to explore Whispering Oaks for her documentary series. She had heard countless stories of ghostly apparitions and unexplained phenomena and wanted to capture evidence of the paranormal activity. Rachel arrived at the mansion just before midnight, armed with her camera, audio recorder, and a flashlight. The air was crisp, and the moon cast an eerie glow over the decaying structure. As she stepped inside, the floorboards creaked loudly, and a chill ran down her spine. The interior of the mansion was in shambles, with broken furniture, shattered windows, and thick layers of dust covering everything. Rachel set up her equipment in the grand foyer, where a massive chandelier hung precariously from the ceiling. She began recording, speaking softly into the camera about the history of the Hawthorne family and the rumors of their tragic fate. As she moved through the mansion, Rachel noticed strange symbols etched into the walls, symbols she couldn't identify. She felt an overwhelming sense of unease, but continued her exploration, determined to uncover the truth. In the living room, she heard faint whispers, like distant conversations, but she was alone. Following the whispers, she found herself in the kitchen, where the air grew noticeably colder. The whispers intensified, and she saw a ghostly figure of a woman standing by the sink. The figure turned to face her, and Rachel felt a surge of fear as she saw the woman's hollow eyes and sorrowful expression. The woman spoke in a barely audible voice. "Help us." Find the truth. Before Rachel could react, the figure vanished, and the whispers ceased. Shaken but resolute, Rachel continued her investigation, feeling a strange connection to the spirits trapped within the mansion. In the basement, she discovered a hidden room behind a false wall. Inside, she found old newspapers and documents detailing a dark secret. The Hawthorne family had been involved in occult practices, trying to summon supernatural beings. Something had gone horribly wrong, leading to their untimely deaths. Rachel realized that the spirits were trapped because of the unfinished ritual. She spoke into her camera, documenting her findings, and decided to perform a cleansing ritual to help the spirits move on. Using the symbols and incantations she found in the hidden room, she began the ritual, feeling a heavy presence around her. As she chanted the incantation, the temperature dropped further, and she felt icy hands gripping her arms. Shadows danced around the room, and she heard anguished cries. With great effort, she completed the ritual, and a blinding light filled the room. The shadows dissipated, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted. Rachel felt a sense of peace as the spirits of the Hawthorne family were finally freed. Exhausted but relieved, she left the mansion, knowing she had helped bring closure to a tragic chapter in its history. Her documentary aired a few months later, capturing the hearts of viewers and bringing renewed interest in the mysteries of Whispering Oaks. Though the mansion remains abandoned, it no longer feels cursed. Locals say the spirits have found peace, and the whispers that once haunted the halls have been replaced by an eerie silence. Whispering Oaks stands as a testament to the power of compassion and the enduring quest for truth in the face of darkness.